Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this beautiful Saturday morning. We are broadcasting live from the Cherry Farm here, parking right outside of Memphis. Frank Duffy on the bridge aboard Bengal 1, somewhere between Columbia and Kansas City, as he heads out to Yellowstone and parts unknown to this point. We've got a great show in store for you today. Kevin Scarbinsky will also be joining us at about 34 after, and Bo Carter in hour number 2. Buddy Martin out today, and keep him in your prayers, him and his wife, and he'll be back with us in a couple of weeks. But got a lot to talk about today as these regional baseball games are being played around the country. 10 SEC schools involved in that, this field of 64. It's really, really a lot of fun. And, of course, the destination for everybody is Omaha. 6 days a week, 25 shows a month, at least 50 hours a month of content. Sidelines, that's what we do. We talk about sports, had a great show yesterday. That was a lot of fun, Frank. We had Riley Gaines on with us. What a warrior. What a just a really great, great young lady. Like I say, Frank and I got kids her age. Don't keep talking about this generation. America's gotten – listen, the more Riley Gaines we got out there, the better the United States of America is. She is a fighter. Obviously, she's got great parents, comes from great stock. Kentucky All-American swimmer, but really, really had a fantastic couple of segments with her yesterday. Doug Dean and Ben Troop and I had her on with us yesterday. Hey, follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. Let me mention real quick, going on today, the Farm Fest over in Wynne, Arkansas, right next to us. The next couple of weekends, it's going to be big, but this weekend, the Farm Fest out there at the Wynne Sports Complex going on. Fannie Mae's barbecue, her famous turkey legs, rib tips, barbecue nachos, and pulled pork sandwiches, as we say in the South, off the rotisserie. I got 2 smokers going. As she says, MJ will go crazy. And by the way, Frank, these are the people, Walter and Darlene Hill, when y'all sent that money up here to support the people in Wynne from the tornado, that's where we met them. They are just absolutely rocks over there in Wynne, Darlene and Walter Hill. But they make these funnel cakes, Frank. You ready for this? Now, when you go to the fair, you see some things and a lot of people that you've never seen in your life, like that or Music Fest or, say, Mardi Gras. They make a funnel cake that fills up an entire large plate, and it's got just everything sinful on it, as well as a pound or 2 of confection sugar. But you don't have to go to the fair.
And Rob, you know if they're good at making funnel cakes, you know they're damn good at making corn dogs. And you know us LSU fans, we like our good corn dogs.
Yeah. Hey, my friend Danny Andrini's family makes the Pronto Pups. That's a unique Memphis thing. I'm like, people call them corn dogs. No, it's a Pronto Pup. It's all about the batter. But Frank, NCAA baseball, man, got all the scores. Everything's coming in here. You know, looking at it, Kentucky wins last night, 4-0 over Ball State. Looking down in the SEC. You got a lot of teams involved. Auburn got beat by the Penn Quakers. They came in seeking peace, not violence or war, and they beat Auburn 6-3 in 11 innings. Just goes to show you, Frank, there's good baseball played all over the country, and those guys at Penn probably pretty smart, and their pitching is good, and they've got some hitters. Auburn, really, since they beat Missouri for the 4th straight time in Hoover, this is the 3rd straight loss. They've got to find the bats, but let's talk about them and your LSU Tigers.
Well, I know Coach is going to be a little ornery this morning after that late inning loss for y'all. But look, that just proves, man, these teams can play baseball when they come in. Any regional that you've got 4 teams. You better be ready to play if you're that number 1 seed. And look, we were fortunate. How many number 1 seeds, of the regionals that we got hosting it? 8 for the SEC?
Yeah, 8 of the 16.
Which is phenomenal, right? But look, my LSU Tigers learned about a decade ago when Stony Brook came in. You can't take any team lightly when you're talking about a regional. But, yeah, I did see that. In fact, I listened a little bit late when we were driving. We drove all the way from Atlanta to Columbia, Missouri last night. That's where we stayed. Still can't get over that's an SEC campus town, but we stayed there last night on our way to Yellowstone, like you said, via Colorado Springs. But I really was missing being able to watch my Tigers play. And, of course, we're hosting the Baton Rouge Regional, and we played Tulane, most would say our little brother from New Orleans. And Tulane had the distinction of being the worst team to ever make it into the field of 64 in college baseball with I want to say they were under 500 by like 19 or 20 games. But that shows you what a hot team can do when you get into a tournament and you start playing well. And look, we had our ace going. Unfortunately, Skeen's best player in baseball can't pitch every game. Unfortunately, our second and third pitchers, because of injuries, are not where they should be, and our bullpen is, kind of a mess. And we're not hitting the ball as well, just to kind of make up for it. But last night, when LSU was up in the game, Tulane had scored 2 runs and had their big bopper and just missed hitting one out. So yeah, these 4-team regionals, you've got to be playing your A game to get out of them. And you were right. Kentucky played really well against Ball State. In fact, that's who we will see if we make it into the regional, the super regional. We're in that bracket, I believe, with Kentucky. So all eyes are on baseball right now. We said it last year leading up to the SEC tournament and then to the regionals last year. And then with Coach and Auburn going out to Omaha, it's just a great time for college baseball, for people that love college baseball. And I don't think there's any conference in America that loves its college baseball like the SEC does.
I cannot disagree with you at all. And 9 of the 10 SEC teams won last night. Auburn, the only team to lose. No, you're not out of it. It's not single elimination. So Auburn will play in that elimination round today. The 1 and 2 seeds in that regional, number 1 Auburn, number 2 Southern Miss, both got beat. Samford that went to extra innings, and they beat Southern Miss 4-2. So look, Auburn's familiar with Samford, but last year Southern Miss had that big regional. They beat LSU and knocked them out, but they were defeated by Ole Miss, I guess, in the super regional. And that was one of the biggest crowds. I mean, the biggest crowds they've ever seen down there.
Yeah.
Frank, college baseball, the teams up north. I know Indiana's in the tournament. Well, they opened their season at Auburn this past year. They're in the tournament. Right. The value of coming down south and playing, you can't put a price on that. There's no value. It just seeing the pitching and the hitting and everything. And, they mentioned that 5 or 6 of the Penn baseball players are grad transfers. And they said, Coach Thompson said this before the Auburn game. He said, this is where they're all going to big-time schools as grad transfers to keep playing baseball. So they've got good players up there at Penn.
Yeah, well, and again, you get a team that comes in, they're playing well, and look, let's face it. I mean, Auburn took it to extra innings. It's there's no shame in losing an extra inning game. It's a coin flip once you get in the extra innings, even for the home squad, though they have a slight advantage. These teams that come in can play baseball. They've run the gauntlet. They've been through their own 40-game baton death march of their own conferences, and then when you win your conference tournament, which most of them obviously have to do to make it into the field of 64, and they come in, it's a crapshoot. Like you said, it's a double elimination to round robin. Really, it's always obviously much easier route if you can win those first 2 games. Everybody else is on the defensive. You have the high ground, to use a combat analogy. But that's not to say that Auburn can't come back and win this. Like you said, it's a double elimination. And Auburn's pitching, again, that's one of the strong parts, in my opinion, of Auburn's team. And when you've got pitching, you can go far in these tournaments because, look, I got the best player in college baseball, but he can't pitch, tonight. He can't pitch the next game. That's the issue. And when you've got a deep, rotation, and especially when you've got a bench. I mean, that's our biggest problem. That's why Texas A&M knocked us out of the SEC baseball tournament. Is we get into our bullpen in the 7th and 8th and 9th inning, and we're just not that good. And by the way, I figured out a long time ago, the only thing that overcomes a shaky bullpen is you got to be hitting gorilla ball, and you got to be hitting two home runs a game. You got to be putting up 6, 7, 8, 9 runs a game to overcome a shaky bullpen. So I think, Rob, mark my words, you could see 6 teams in the SEC in Omaha. Mark my word.
That is a possibility, but let's go back to the pitching analogy. The one thing that's different about baseball and college football, pro football, whatever, it doesn't matter. Your quarterback is typically your most valuable player. You can have him go every game. In baseball, because they only play once a week, baseball, the difference is your best pitcher, Skane, he can go once and then he's off another 4 or 5 days. So you go with him. And you've got to have depth, and you're exactly right. And it's kind of like if your defense isn't very good, you got to try to outscore people. Well, that also happens because of these hurry up, no huddle offenses in baseball. LSU kind of brought gorilla ball to the forefront of the baseball, viewer public out there years ago. But it works. If your pitching's poor, you can win 11-6. I mean, you can take those wins every day.
As long as you're hitting them out, as long as you're hitting, and that's what wound up happening. LSU toward the tail end of the season. The hitting was not there to cover up the shaky bullpen and then the shaky, 2-starter, 3-starter. But here's the big problem. When you get in these compacted tournaments, like a regional, like a super regional, you don't have that spread. Now, actually, it's kind of funny. The College World Series actually gives you a little bit more flexibility because of the number of teams that are out there. It does expand out the time period. In fact, we're going up to Yellowstone, and Ron and I have said if our Tigers make it out there, we're going to, instead of heading down to Salt Lake City and going down the western side of the Rockies in Bengal 1, we're making an immediate left and heading through Cody, Wyoming, and heading back to Omaha. As big of a baseball fan as I am, as big of an LSU fan as I am, I have never been to Omaha to see our 6 national championships. I am going now if we can make it. And I even told my buddy, and by the way, you want to hear something really cool? We've got a lunch kind of where Winthrop and Billy Ray Valentine went in Philadelphia, kind of one of those types of clubs. And my good buddy, who's a huge Tulane fan, sent out on a lark, sent an invitation to all the club members, hey, does anybody want to come and watch the LSU Tulane game on Friday afternoon? We get a big lunch crowd on Friday because of fried shrimp, whatnot. Our Louisiana food is big on Friday. But he sent out an invitation to see who wanted to go. You know how many people decided to cut work and go watch LSU and Tulane play on TV? 44 guys, Tulane and LSU fans, that were sitting around that clubhouse yesterday watching that game. That's what's going on in college baseball right now. That's the interest level.
It really is. And, they were talking about the crowds everywhere last night. They were, way over the limit. Remember the old people worried about the fire marshal? I mean, but seriously, they've got the outfield terraces at all these places. And you can go back and you can thank Mississippi State in the left field lounge for really getting that, because we didn't see that. And it started just grassroots, which everything does. But the neat thing about it is the box, Alex Box Stadium, Tony Sacheries, and they're great sponsors there. And by the way, that is money well spent when you advertise at a baseball, because everybody can't help but see your billboard. I'd like to get a Sidelines.live billboard at one of those. Maybe put it on. And by the way, Frank, my son Max got out there May 17th. He's in Moose or Jackson, Wyoming. Moose is the entrance to the Tetons, and Jackson is 50 minutes probably from the front gate to Yellowstone. But I told him you were coming out there, so when you get close, let me know. He works at a resort out there. and he gets 3 days a week off, and he kayaks and fishes and mountain bikes and runs, and this is his fourth summer in a row out there.
Tell him I'm not that adventurous, but I'll certainly meet him for a bison burger right outside the gates. I'll certainly do that. By the way, don't forget, I met him at the Sigma New House when LSU and you, me, and Doug went to the game.
That was the red guy. That was Wilson. I've got another one, Max. He's younger. Max is my free spirit, man. Max is Max. That kid. They all grew up over here, hunting ducks in Mississippi and Arkansas and fishing and mountain biking, and it's kind of cool. But hey, man, what a great play. He'll be there, he says, this year till November. Listen, it starts snowing out there in late September, and a winter out there.
Let me tell you, I came here like 3 Mays ago.
Yeah,
we were up on the Continental Divide, which is right in Yellowstone. Literally when you go up to the peak. Let me tell you something. We had a snowstorm. This was like in late May, early June of like 3 or 4 years ago. It's beautiful. We love it up there. So, Rhonda, last time we went up, Rhonda was not feeling well. And so we made it all the way to Bighorn National Park, but couldn't make it all the way to Yellowstone. So I'm excited to go show her all of Yellowstone. It's just incredible up here.
Yeah, and then we're going to try to get out there this summer ourselves. Going to be a lot of fun. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. I already got comments coming in from some folks about this baseball stuff. But, yeah, it is beautiful out there. Land of the pronghorn. They call the bucks out. They call them a goat, a male pronghorn antelope. Here we go. Right back after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Frank Duffy is heading west out to Yellowstone aboard Bengal 1, and already got some comments coming in. This one, this is interesting from Randolph and Mortimer Duke. No comparison, baseball and football. That's what I was trying to say. The QB always plays. Baseball pitcher, your top guy can only go once every 5 days. And then he follows that up, Randolph and Mortimer Duke, the Duke brothers. There is a reason Oklahoma has only lost once in softball all season. Yeah, they are amazing, and they're coming in to the SEC. You talk about bringing sand to the beach, Oklahoma and Texas, but it's going to get tougher. Frank, we hadn't even gotten into this yet. SEC spring meetings. Kevin Scarbinsky is going to be on with us in about 15 minutes from Birmingham, but they've been down in Destin all week, for about 4 days. The university presidents, coaches, athletic directors, media people from all over the country. 1736 on the schedule. You can debate that all day, every day, and on Sundays. Nick Saban, I don't want to have to play Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU every year. You already do, Coach. I heard on Marty and McGee this morning, and you can tear this argument apart, but there's truth in it. All these coaches, Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, Nick Saban, they've all coached. I mean, Nick Saban played football with Gary Pinkel at Kent State for Coach Don James back in the early 70s. Will Muschamp, Valdosta State. All you name the coach, they've Hugh Freeze started out in high school. They know how important it is for what Jimmy Ott calls those rental wins. So, you if you have an 8-game schedule, you have 4. You have one big Power 5 game you got to play out of the conference. Then you've got 3, but it helps those other schools. And then you say the 3-6, we get a 9th game, but that's also an additional loss for 8 of those schools, which could affect bowl eligibility. What are you in favor of, Frank?
Yeah, well, I agree. I kind of like the 8 schedule myself. I think you could potentially water down the conference by having to play that 9th game. Now, having said that, if they do it, let's strap it on. Let's go. LSU won't be backing down from anybody. We'll take on all comers. But I think from a conference standpoint, I do think it makes sense staying with the 8 games, only because you have, that, like you said, those renegades. But those renegades, to your point, Rob, really help a lot of these, college programs. I mean, you don't want it to be so top heavy. It already really is, but you need the McNeese States. You need the, Monroe, Louisianas. And that's what, like say at LSU, we'll play a lot of the in-state teams to give them a payday, give them the exposure. And you don't want that going away. I think that in the end would hurt college football. But again, the SEC has to worry about what's best for the SEC. But I think if you have that potential next game on a tough schedule, you know what that grind is going through the SEC. Yes, you could potentially have teams that have an extra loss, which hurts their bowl bid. You could have the ability of having, a 2-loss team representing the SEC, in the bowl, selection discussion. So I think there is some truth to that. I hate to side with Nick, but yeah, I think there is that school of thought. That said, though, if it's 9 games, well, wow, your home schedule is going to be that much better. It's going to be that much more excitement. So I don't think we can lose either way. I am interested to see, though, how they do the breakdown and if they're going to go to divisions or they're going to go to, a rotating schedule. Like, I mean, look at baseball. Major League Baseball went to the balanced schedule. Everybody's playing everybody at some point in time. So you've got 2 schools of thought, but that's why our boys make the big money in Birmingham, right?
Well, it is, and it's an argument that can go on forever, but you do want to help those other schools. Every coach has coached his way up the ranks. Rarely do you see a coach go, well, I mean, Hugh Freeze went from high school to assistant at Ole Miss. He was coaching girls basketball, volleyball. You name the coach. They've paid their dues. Yeah, that's right.
Coach from Arkansas. I mean,
yeah.
You're exactly right. And you go to these small schools. Look at Brian Kelly coming the small school route. I mean, look at the wins he's got at small schools. So, yeah, I think it would make sense to stay with the 8. And look, it allows us to prepare. Our teams are better. I as a team that's been in a lot of these kickoff classics, it's kind of nice to get that warm up underneath your belt. Look at our national championship year, 2019. We had a game before we had to go to Austin, right? Last year we had to play, Florida State the first game. If we play them 2 or 3 games later, again, if we're candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But if that would have happened, I think it might have been a different outcome. So I think it helps our conference to have that tune-up, have those again, renegades, help your in-state, your smaller schools, your Stanfords, those types of schools, UT Chattanooga, help them, but it's, I think, also help in the conference.
No doubt it is. Say hello to Billy Roberts down there with his family, his dad, and everybody in Key West. Billy, wish we wanted to have you on this morning, but you're down in Key West. I know one thing when you're down there, you will forget what day it is. You don't know about anything. That's the most laid-back place possibly in the world, along with Hardy, Arkansas. Of course, getting in an RV, driving across the country. That's about as good as it gets. Another comment just came in from Ernest Borgnine. You go to 9 SEC games when the college football playoff expands from 4 to 12 spots. Because theoretically, I guess what Ernest Borgnine is saying, hell of an actor, is that you could have a 9-3 or 10-2 SEC team. Someone brought this up on the show yesterday. Hey, our losses were to number 1, Georgia, number 2, Alabama, and number 4, LSU. That strength of schedule should carry you a long way. On the flip side, the Big 12, they play everybody because of the size of the conference. What did that do in terms of preparing TCU for the national championship game against Georgia, 65-7? They made a hell of a statement. Greg Sankey pointed that out.
Yes. No, you're right. Like I said, I can go either way on this. The 6-3, if that's what we wind up going, we've got our 3 regulars and our 6 rotating. It's never going to make everybody happy. Nothing is. What did Lincoln say? You can't, please all the people all the time. You just can't. So either way it goes, you're going to have people that are going to be griping. I mean, Saban's griping about who his regular, rotation would be. Hey, get in line. We've been playing Florida on the other side of the SEC East for all these years. Yeah, we would have loved, a down Tennessee or a Vanderbilt or Kentucky, but you're not going to be able to get it. So all that we ask from the conference, all that we ask from Sankey and the boys in Birmingham, besides getting some more equitable guys on the replay button at the referee's booth. But other than that, all we can ask is do what's best for the conference. If you do what's best for the conference by the laws of association and trickle down, it's going to be the best for everybody. And, we all going to have to just tighten your chin straps, no matter which way it falls, and go out there, do your 2-a-days, and go run your stadium stairs, and be ready for when we kick it off. And then it's decided on the field. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, if it is 9-3, 6-3 with a 9-game schedule, you're right. There's going to be more flexibility because of the playoffs, somebody getting in. But look, when you go to 12 games, the 13th guy is going to be upset. When you went to 64 tournament seed for basketball, the 65th guy got upset, so they went to 68. Guess what? The 69th guy gets upset. It's always going to be.
You ever notice the worst salesman in the office always bitch and moan when they run out of the bond? Oh, I had a guy that wanted them. Well, I remember a trader, my mentor, Kent Gieselman, telling me one time, I went and got the guy another block of $1 million, and he, oh, well, my guy's not. He said he'll wait till later. There's all the whining that you hear from number 65 or number 13 in a 12 team. You're absolutely right, Frank. And that's just the way it goes, because people are always going to have a reason why they don't succeed. And I think that's a real, it's just a fact. People, you have the number 5 team, that was the best team. Your backup quarterback is always the best quarterback out there. Again, Kevin knows this. I loved what Coach Dye used to say in that book I've got in the back here after the arena. He said, I used to love to stand in the backfield at practice and watch the quarterbacks. I watch their body language. My quarterbacks were not allowed to have a negative thought through their head. You think about that. My wife has a saying, Kevin and Frank, junk in your head, junk out. Positive in, positive out. It's like, damn, it's true. You are what you eat.
The best statement about that is, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, that's it. Kevin Scarbinsky, Frank is aboard Bengal 1 heading out. He spent the night in Columbia, Missouri, and he said, what did you say? I can't believe this is an SEC town. But heading to Yellowstone aboard Bengal 1.
I still can't believe it. Can't believe that's an SEC campus, but hey, it is what it is. Hey, look, we're about to get a couple more, so I better get used to it.
That's well, I can assure you Norman and Austin definitely fit the bill. Kevin got an NCAA regional going on in baseball. 9 of the SEC's 10 teams won last night. Auburn came up short, but this past week at SEC spring meetings down in Destin, what a terrible place to have to spend some time. A lot of discussion, 1-7, 3-6, storming the field and all, but at least they weren't having conversations about trying to keep members from jumping the fence and escaping the old Berlin Wall. But what was your takeaway from this week?
Well, good morning, first of all, Rob.
Hey.
Good morning, Frank. Safe travels there, Frank.
Thank you.
It's when you step back and think about it, everybody's been talking about the schedule, even leading up to the meeting, during the meeting, long before the meetings. And it is another sign that the SEC, I guess, is the NFL light, because we're spending more time talking about games they're going to play, might not play, than almost as much as we do the actual games themselves. So this has become an event talking about SEC football. They've scheduled an event on June 14th for us to learn who everybody's going to play in 2024. So it's really a power of SEC football. Everybody has an opinion, not just those of us who live in the SEC footprint, but everyone across the country, many of them negative outside the SEC footprint, about the 8-game schedule for 2024. To me, the bottom line is it just shows how much people care about SEC football, how powerful SEC football is. And look, 1 year, 1 game on each team, it's not really that big a difference. It's not going to throw the world off. It's not going to alter our lives terribly one way or another. But we don't want more SEC football, right? We'd rather see 9 games than 8. We'd rather see Alabama and LSU play than Alabama and Middle Tennessee State, or LSU and Central Connecticut State, just to throw a team out. We'd rather see them play each other, wouldn't we? So it's in one way it's silly. The debate is silly, but again, it also shows just how big this monster is that we talk about all year long.
Yeah, and this morning I was telling Frank, Marty and McGee were talking, and they made some really salient points, and that is, all these coaches that came up from Valdosta State, or they've been at Troy, that's your school, and Florida, but I'm one of these people, and my blood runs orange and blue, but I don't want to ever see these other schools like Troy or UAB. I don't want them to disappear. I don't want to just have a handful of college football teams that have everything. College sports are great. We had Riley Gaines on the show with us yesterday morning. She's a 12-time All-American NCAA swimmer, 5-time SEC champ, 2022 SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year. And she pointed out something about, because I have 2 boys and 2 girls now, and she said that 94% of the female C executives, in corporate America, 94% of them played sports growing up or in college. That's a hell of a statement. So we need to make sure, and I go through Troy, and I was coming up about 3 years ago, the year of the virus back in October of 20, on a Sunday afternoon, coming back up from 30A, had been down there with a bunch of my fraternity brothers from Auburn, and we got caught in some traffic, and we had to stop in Troy, I think at the Ramada Inn there, and do the Sunday Sidelines show. But I went all over that campus. God, they are serious. They're up there playing in Alabama. They beat Boston College last night in the regional. John Hartwell, our friend, was AD there. He's now at ULM. They got him there to try to make their program better. I just like to see college sports, because if you hire athletes, people that have grown up in that tough, hard work works, Kevin and Frank, and y'all know that. All of us know, we remember the tough times we went through, and sports had a lot to do with it.
Absolutely. And so, I like the idea that, I know Nick Saban said it again from Destin, that he would eventually like to see all Power 5 opponents on SEC schedules. I'm not a fan of that. I as much as I'd love to see more SEC football, I think there's still room to play, a Power 5 team outside of the SEC, and then an FBS team out or FCS, whatever your preference outside of that. That's why, I've advocated for a 10-game SEC schedule. The coaches aren't going for that anytime soon. But we saw it, obviously, as you mentioned, Rob, during the COVID year. They played 10 games. Now, they didn't play, the full schedule as they normally would. They started later. But they did play 10 SEC regular season games, and they didn't have to shut down the sport. They survived it pretty well. So I'd love to see that, plus one Power 5, plus one pick whoever you like.
Yeah, hold those thoughts here. When I bring my hand up, we're going to take a quick break. The Hams Bear told me it was time to take a break. We'll be right back with more on Sidelines. All right, we're joined by Kevin Scarbinsky, great, one of the top writers in the country down in Birmingham. Clark Griswold, Frank Duffy heading out to Yellowstone aboard Bengal 1. Frank, just you and Rhonda, could you imagine you had, 4 or 5 kids on that thing? I mean, that would really be fun, but we probably wouldn't be able to hear you. But weigh in on your thoughts with this scheduling thing. Kevin, man, you're a great writer. Again, you're a great guest on here, part of this team here, because you think about everything you're saying because you've already written it, and that's powerful stuff. And I know you do incredible work in the Birmingham Lead, and we want to talk about that. But I'm going to tell you this. You can look online all you want, but I still like to print the stuff off and read it where I can highlight it and underline it and all like that. It is, again, like exercising or lifting weights with your brain. But, Clark, jump in here with us.
No, I love this conversation because there are great points on both sides. And Kevin, a 10-game schedule, I think that might throw the Southeast United States off of its axis. If we came up with that one, but it would be interesting. And look, it did make a unique season that year when we did play those 10 games. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I really don't. I think there's benefits for both. If you keep the 8 games, yeah, you get a few more tune-ups. Yeah, you help the smaller teams. And like we were saying before you got on, Kevin, nobody's going to be happy with what their 3, permanent ones are. There's always going to be some grousing back and forth. Yeah. But I think whatever it is, I think you got to get everybody to buy in. And I think if Sankey and the group at the SEC offices, as long as they do what they feel is best for the conference, as opposed to what's best for individual, thoughts or individual interests, I think that's going to be fine. Whatever comes out, as long as it's what's best for the conference, I think we'll be just fine. And what I have figured out after all these last 3 years of COVID and NIL and everything dissolves on September 5th when toe meets leather. It literally just all dissolves away, and we're focused on football, which is what's awesome.
Frank, you're not driving there with no hands on the wheel, are you?
No, I'm at a stoplight. By the way, I-70 for some reason all of a sudden shut down. They funneled us off, and so I was like, I looked at Rhonda. Rhonda looked at me. I was like, I-70's closed for whatever reason, so we're off on a side highway. So be careful if you're driving out west, folks. If you're on the I-70 series, remember the old I-70 series between St. Louis and Kansas City? What a great series that was in '85. I'm still irritated at Don Denkinger for blowing that call at first, which cost me my series bet, but that's another story.
Hey, Frank, I'm going to tell you guys now, if the Florida Gators win their way to the College World Series this year, which they certainly are capable of doing, as are about 6 or 7 other SEC teams, then my son, who's a student at Florida, has already said, Dad, we got to go. And he's trying to figure out how to go. I don't know. I said, I don't know what plane. You better start checking plane flights. And I know it's an awful long drive. I've never driven that far, but you better start figuring out how we're going to get there, because he's all excited about the Gators baseball team.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, let me tell you, it's funny you should mention that, because when Ron and I started planning this trip, we're going to go up to Yellowstone after Colorado Springs, and we're going to stay a little bit in Denver, go to Vail and stuff, but we're heading up to Yellowstone. But if LSU makes it, we're coming down. We're going to take a left hand at Cody, Wyoming, and go straight to Omaha. We're doing that. So if y'all come up, there's been some great gumbo made in this RV. Y'all come on by and make sure you get your bowl.
That's a plan, Frank. I hope we see the Tigers and the Gators there, and I hope it ends up like it did in 2017.
Hey, I think we have a good shot at 6 teams from the SEC making this thing. I think you could see 6 teams in Omaha from the SEC.
Hey, Rob, can you turn up my volume? I've got my volume all the way up, and I can barely hear you guys. I hope you can hear me well, but I can barely hear you guys.
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Yeah, I can hear you. I mean, I can hear you fine. It comes in.
Yeah,
great.
I'm having trouble hearing you guys though. You're real low. I've got my volume all the way up.
You on your phone? Are you on your iPhone? Is that what you're?
I'm on my Android. I'm an Android guy.
Okay, yeah. Just check the volume on that. But I've got the volume here. Let's see if this works any better. How's that? Is that better?
No, it didn't make any difference. Yeah, I've got my volume all the way up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can hear you. You're coming in great. You've got one of the great broadcast voices out there. You should do play-by-play. But we hear you fine, and I'm hearing Frank fine. And like I said, I was worried Frank was driving down I-70 with no hands, but he could have one of those new smart cars or something like that. But I can't imagine a hands-free. What does that thing weigh? About 20,000-pound RV?
Yeah. No. There's no hands-free on this baby. And I will tell you, the stopping distance on this, you have to be all in. So when I do this, it's funny. If you notice, hands on wheel, this machine needs your direct attention. So I'll talk hands free if I put my phone like it is in the cup holder now. But driving on this thing, and I have never to this date even sniffed alcohol going to or from any game, not even 5 hours later after kickoff, we'll get in and drive. Not ever on game day. Not with this beast.
It's a fun trip. We're gonna check in about 15 minutes with Tim Seeger, Tutai Timmy up there in Hardy, Arkansas, kind of our travel correspondent at the intersection where you go up to the Ozarks or you go out to the White River toward Mountain Home and Branson. This guy is y'all remember the David Letterman show, Kevin and Frank, when he had Larry Bud Melman out there at the Port Authority welcoming visitors to New York City. Larry Bud Melman and Frank reminded me of that crazy laugh. He would say, "Yes, David, as the visitors come to New York City, full of hopes and dreams before they're crushed in the reality of their life will be a miserable existence." Would you care for a hot towel? Timmy Tutai is this guy up in Hardy. We've known him for years. And Nigel, my web designer and social media director, said, you ought to start bringing him on the show, here and there, just talk about, because he's meeting people from all over the country that are traveling this time of year. But Kevin, I'm going to get you Frank's contact information today, because seriously, you go out there, you're going to have more fun than you've ever had in Omaha. I go through there on the way to pheasant hunting, but we don't spend any time there. We go up I-29 to Sioux Falls and then go west on I-90. That's the first time and you will see this when you get out there, Frank. You know it, Kevin. Tumbleweed. It's real, and it blows across the interstate. Hey, I didn't know that stuff existed.
Coldest night of my life was driving right straight from the Nebraska LSU Sugar Bowl in 1985 on New Year's night, driving out to go to Colorado to Vail to go skiing with me and some of my buddies, and we stopped in Wichita Falls to pump gas. And when I tell you, it had to be 60 below, and there's this tumbleweed going by. I swear to God, it had icicles on it as it was coming by at the gas station at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's cold,
you think
baby.
you're watching?
It's cold.
You think you're watching Grit TV, that cowboy channel on there? Kevin, let's get back on here now. on the football, the SEC looks. I mean, obviously, it's very strong. In June 14th, again, they're going to have this event, but also before that, they're going to have SEC on the Hill going to Washington. You're aware of that about NIL. Ross Dellinger, I don't know him, but there's a really good article. A lot of people sent it to me from SI.com about NIL. We had Andy Humphrey on from KTGR up in Columbia, Missouri, covers Missouri for us a couple of days ago on the show. And I asked him about that new NIL law. And he said, yeah, if you're an in-state prospect athlete and you sign a scholarship in December of your senior year of high school, going to an in-state school within Missouri, you can start collecting on NIL right there. Oklahoma's got one law. Arkansas's got one. Texas has one. Then we know what Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida have. They're totally different. Your thoughts on all that?
Well, that's one of the things that I think Nick Saban was talking about the unlevel playing field. Although in the overall, and I wrote a column about it, I don't think Nick Saban wants a level playing field. Nick Saban has spent every waking moment since January of 2007 trying to unlevel the playing field and tilt it towards Tuscaloosa with the way he and his staff work, with the recruiting that they do, everything, the number of analysts that they were on the cutting edge of exploding staff sizes and putting as many people in positions of support, not just from a football standpoint, but nutrition and mental health. And, so Nick, I don't think Nick, who left the NFL after only 2 years because he didn't like the parity, he didn't like the fact that it was a level playing field for the most part. I don't think he really wants a level playing field, especially if it's not tilted towards him. So he sees things like that where other schools can get an advantage. He sees what Georgia has built with Kirby using the blueprint he took from Tuscaloosa, which he helped build himself. Yeah. And he sees the way this is going. And it's not that Alabama isn't one of the elite programs still. It is, and it will be as long as Nick is there. It's that he now has, primarily to his east, he's got a rival that can look him in the eye year in and year out, 365 days a year, in recruiting, in every aspect, in putting players in the NFL, all the areas where Alabama was, LSU would step up and Auburn would step up, but consistently, no one's quite done that since he got to Tuscaloosa and got that thing rolling like Kirby at Georgia. So he is now a little concerned that the playing field, it might be tilting a little bit towards Athens rather than Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, hey, he's got his Western allies to the west. He's now got Russia out to the east, which is Kirby. He's got a two-front war. And by the way, you know what that makes him, but I'm an LSU guy, so
Well, it's tough for him. And then you look, Florida's going to fix their situation. If you look, Buddy Martin, Franzbeard, Ben Troop, they talk on with us every week about Florida. And you look at the Gators, they were within a touchdown of winning 9 or 10 games last year. Billy Napier didn't get a lobotomy, okay? He can still coach. What nobody wants to do anymore is give coaches time. Buddy Martin says nobody likes a low and slow, like you're cooking a brisket, whatever. They want it in the microwave. They want it right now. Billy Napier will win. The Hebner Center there at Florida, that's a $115 million football-only facility. The Gators have won. I mean, if you look at all time, they've won over 260 SEC championships in men's and women's sports. Nobody's even close to that. I mean, Florida, they've stubbed their toe a little bit. Dan Mullen, he didn't like to recruit. He was their version of Brian Harsin, who felt like everybody should just come to him, and then he would decide if he wanted to keep you or not. But Florida's going to fix their situation. Tennessee is ascending.
They're the most interesting story in SEC football this year.
Yeah.
They are absolutely the most interesting story.
Kevin, I mean, your son's in school down there. Is he writing for the paper, by the way?
Well, Florida. Look, Florida's not going to be down for long. We know that. They have too many resources. They, like most schools in the SEC, they care too much to stay down for long. And we know what kind of coach Billy Napier is, not just as a coach, but as a program builder. We know what he did at Louisiana. We know what he learned. He learned from Dabo. He learned from, even though that didn't end well, at Clemson. He learned from Nick, obviously, his time in Tuscaloosa. So I feel like if they have some patience in Gatorland, I think Billy will get that thing back where Florida's competing for championships. And now you've got an adult in the room in Baton Rouge, which you haven't really had since Nick Saban at the head coaching position. So he's a threat, as Frank said. You've got Kirby doing his thing in Athens. Billy will build that back up. Hugh Freeze, look, by default, Auburn will be better with Hugh Freeze there. And they already are in terms of talent acquisition, which is the heart of the ball game. You know, Hugh's already brought in, especially from the transfer perspective, he's brought in some better players to Auburn. And as you said, as you alluded to, Rob, Harsin just didn't work at recruiting. He didn't understand that you had to work at it every moment of every day. You would better be focusing on recruiting. He had the opposite. He thought he could out-coach people and outsmart people. That doesn't work. Nick Saban said it on the plane with Mal Moore coming from South Florida to Tuscaloosa. He said, I don't know how good a coach I'm going to paraphrasing, of course, was leaving out some colorful adjectives. He said, I don't know how good a coach I am, but I'm a pretty damn good recruiter. And he knew it. Kirby said it multiple times. It's about recruiting. The guys that get it win and they last. The guys that don't, they might have an outstanding season here. They might catch lightning in a bottle, but they're not going to build a consistent program.
They got to go back to Idaho.
Yeah. Well, you look at the overall athletic program at Florida. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Just give you an idea, SEC championships by school. And Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com sent me this, but it's true. Florida, men and women's sports all time, 260 SEC championships. You know what the closest school is to that? Vanderbilt. No, kidding. Georgia. Georgia with 149. And then you've got Arkansas with 139, Tennessee 138, LSU 112, Alabama 103, Kentucky 76, Auburn 75. On down the list, Mississippi State 28, Ole Miss 21, Vandy 21, South Carolina 19, A&M 16, and Missouri 2. I think what you got to really look at is if you're Missouri, are you willing to spend the money? Kevin, you've been probably to every campus around the Southeastern Conference. You know, and I asked this question at Media Days last year in Atlanta to Eli Drinkowitz. What would happen if you could marry that enthusiasm of the Cardinal baseball nation in with the Missouri sports fan base, like they do Atlanta with what they call Braves country? And it really got him. And he came up to me afterwards and said, that was a good question. He goes, I wish I could answer that. But do you think they're trying as hard? Because look at these Southern schools in the deep South. They're up what we call the high South. Different. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're not there. They're certainly not there at the level that, you know, the traditional SEC schools are. And I'm with you, Frank. I've only made one trip to Missouri. The first time Alabama played football against the Tigers after they joined the league, I did not get a good impression.
Yeah,
I'll hold that thought, Rob. I see you. I'll tell you a quick story when we get back.
That's what I want to hear about, because I go up in the Boot Hill a lot, Decatur, which is just north of Blytheville. We'll be right back. Kevin Scarbinsky and Clark Griswold after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Kevin Scarbinsky is going to be right back with us here in just a minute. But Frank, he was talking about the Missouri atmosphere when you go up there for a football game. And they have got to find a way to be all in. You cannot succeed in the SEC unless you are all in.
Correct.
And I'm talking about financially, but the passion of the fans. The money follows the passion, or if you don't have the passion, you're not going to get the money. I mean, that's the reality of this whole situation. And I think that Missouri, I mean, the Cardinal reach is so strong up there. And I don't think people understand, the Braves, look, Frank, from Bo Carter's with us right now. Hello, Bo, out there in the Metroplex.
Hey, Frank.
Frank's Clark Griswold driving Bingle 1 somewhere between Columbia and Kansas City on I-70, which just shut down. So Frank's on the detour. We had Kevin Scarbinsky with us, and he will be hopefully joining us in just a second. May have been, could have been, I don't know, aliens may have abducted him or something. I will, by the way, Frank and Bo, y'all remember years ago, back in the early to mid 70s, the guy down in Gulfport or Biloxi, Mississippi that was on TV that claimed he was abducted by aliens. I will never forget that guy. He goes, yeah. I mean, he had like holes in his forehead where they had supposedly interrogated him. They may have just said, if this is the best they've got, let's just go back to where we're from. But here comes Kevin Scarbinsky with us right now. And let's get Kevin back with us right now. We lost you there for just a moment, but you were describing how much fun and how impressed you were when you went up to Missouri for a football game with Alabama when they first came into the SEC, and the crowd, they were scalping tickets for $1,000 for standing room only, but carry on.
Yeah. Good morning, Bo. First of all, and now I can hear you guys, Rob. Of course, it was operator error with my volume naturally. I finally figured it out. So I'm glad I can actually hear you guys. I was straining there for a few minutes. Anyway, went to the first Alabama football game at Missouri after Missouri joined the SEC. It was a cats and dogs kind of day, rain coming down, nasty, threatening weather in the distance, and as a writer, when I was covering games regularly every weekend, I would go to, I'd usually be one of the last ones out of the press box. And by the time I left the press box, I think I may have been the last guy out of the press box. And not having been there before, I wasn't exactly familiar with where the press parking lot was. It was a parking deck, but I didn't exactly know where I was going. They shut all the lights out. It was almost dark on campus. So I'm almost like a blind man trying to find my car. It is a driving rainstorm. And I will say, one of the nicest Good Samaritans you could imagine was driving a campus bus. I don't know why he was driving a campus bus at midnight on a Saturday night, but I'm so glad he was. So he stopped and said, "Sir, do you need some help?" I said, "Absolutely, help me." I got on the bus. It only took 20 or 30 minutes. We eventually found my parking lot. And so then, that was my experience at Missouri. Not exactly pleasant. That's not Missouri's fault, but to Missouri's credit, that bus driver was a godsend. So amen for him.
Oh, they're friendly people. They're absolutely friendly people. We met some last night. But I will tell you, Rob, you said this is south-north. Let me tell you, I drove this RV 10 hours yesterday from Atlanta to Columbia where we parked last night. They ain't nothing south about Columbia. Nothing. Not a damn thing south.
Well, they got a Cracker Barrel there because when we go pheasant hunting.
But I will tell you, I'm about to pass Arrowhead Stadium, and I can almost smell the barbecue 4 months from now. That's how friggin' good it is here.
Yeah, right there. I mean, they've got a Cracker Barrel in Columbia because when we go up there to pheasant hunt, if we leave late, we'll park over in the corner, and you get up about 5:30. You got all your guns and dogs in the trucks, and you walk there. You're the first ones in the door, and it doesn't take but a second to be served. But it's a different environment out there, and the Cardinals are so big. This is why the SEC, the traditional small college town model, succeeds like it does, Bo. People talk about Starkville or Oxford or Auburn. That's what makes them so special, is that's the biggest game in town. Remember Merle Haggard's great song, The Okie from Muskogee? Football's still the biggest thing on campus, and the kids here still respect the college dean. Seriously, I don't think that ever happened. But anyway, that's what – and you've been everywhere. Didn't you do a book on the great restaurants with Dennis Dodd?
Yes.
Tell about that.
Tales or whatever, the Big 12 handbook with Kevin and my friend Dennis Dodd, one of the and like the all-time Cardinals fan. And speaking of the South, Frank and Kevin,
yeah, he is.
Missouri actually played Dixie as their alternate fight song to like the late 1950s, and then I think the NAACP and some people really got upset about it, and they stopped. They just played the old the thing that sounds like It's a Long Way from Tipperary or whatever too. But they which is weird. I mean, it was the old during the Civil War, the Kansas Missouri. Quantrill's great. Boy, the people at Kansas Missouri badly because
the outlaw Josie Wales. I mean,
Quantrill's Raiders outlaw Josie Wales, the whole thing.
And I love going up in Missouri. St. Louis, I worked for A.G. Edwards for 8 years, and I spent a lot of time in St. Louis down on Laclede's Landing and the Arch and all. It's just that baseball, Kevin, and Bo and Frank, Kevin, you grew up in the shadows in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, and those towns. I mean, how big, how powerful is that Eagles brand in Philadelphia, in the Phillies? And I mean, Rocky's big. Is Rocky bigger than Temple Athletics, the statue? I mean, Philadelphia. I've been to Philadelphia. There's 51 colleges and universities in that city, in the ADI there. It's people down here. It's hard for us to imagine.
Yeah, well, you've got Big Five basketball, with Villanova, Temple, et cetera. Well, they went away from playing each other every year, but there's something special there, and that's what you've got to mix. That's different about Philadelphia and other big cities. Professional sports is just huge, and it tends to blot out the sun in a lot of ways, as you mentioned with the Eagles or whether it's the Phillies. I was a huge Phillies fan growing up. One of the highlights of my younger years was meeting Larry Bowa, my idol, the shortstop for the Phillies, on a caravan that they would do in the off season. And they would come to small towns around the state like Pottsville. And I remember my parents, they let me get out of school, went to visit, met him, got a picture taken with him. And the great thing about the picture is I'm smiling. He looks like he's on the 12th day of a 12-day road trip, and another kid that he doesn't care one thing about is taking his picture with him. And please get me home to Philadelphia. End this tour. He does not look real happy to meet me.
That might be one of the most Philadelphia things I've actually heard. That's very Philadelphia.
Yes. He didn't cuss me out, Frank, or anything like that. But the expression on his face in that picture is priceless.
Well, the thing, you just said something, Frank. You're going through Kansas City right in just a few minutes, and I know when we go on I-70 and you go right by the baseball stadium, Royal Stadium, and Arrowhead Stadium, both in the same parking lot. But you're right; it just blots out the sun. Kansas City on one end, St. Louis on the other, and then you've got Missouri, 107 miles west on I-70 from St. Louis, trying to compete with that. That is why I think they struggle so damn hard, because, the ultimate, I think, as a Southern sports fan, is if your team is playing Missouri in football Saturday, let's say 2:30 or 4 in the afternoon, you stop off Friday night, you're going to spend the night in St. Louis and go to Busch Stadium and across the street, the International Bowling Hall of Fame or whatever you want to go to. And the St. Louis Arch. Then you're going to go to Columbia as an afterthought. That's the difference. And that is a hard mountain to climb. I think we've shed some light on that. Nothing against the people in Missouri. They're wonderful. And the Boot Heel people of Missouri, they're just farmers they're just Delta farmers like we have down here in Mississippi and Arkansas. But for all of y'all that travel, you think about Missouri, but then you look at Oklahoma. Norman is 20 minutes from Bricktown, from Oklahoma City. Is that what it is, Bo? About 25 minutes?
Yeah, not too far.
The suburb. I mean, it's just yeah. I think that's their problem, is that you've got pro sports bookends on each end of the state, Kevin.
Yeah.
Is Kevin there? Looks like Kevin he's frozen.
But I will add, Rob, to that point. I'll pick up if Kevin's not on. St. Louis, you're exactly right. The Cardinal fan base is an incredible fan base. When I was doing the announcing for the Detroit Tigers in Lakeland for spring training, announcing the games, the Cardinals came in as the visiting team one afternoon. And when I tell you, you couldn't have fit one more person into Joker Marchant Stadium with a shoehorn. It was Cardinal red everywhere. They are just some of the loyalist baseball fans. And you're right. You would think that, with Columbia being right there, being a big sports area, that there would be more interest, more passion. And I tell you, it does spill over. LSU's only trip to Columbia was in the year following up our national championship year. So we went during the COVID year. It was the game where Miles Brennan took his last snap for LSU. He had something like 8,000 passing in that game, and strained a chest muscle or something. It was done. Never played another down for LSU. And we lost it, I want to say it was real late or in overtime there. But the people that made the trip, look, LSU, we travel well, right? But if we make it to Omaha, they call it Gomaha for a reason. But with the people that went out to Columbia said it was just kind of a weird vibe. It just wasn't a typical SEC road trip. That, when they got there, you're right, they stayed in St. Louis. Many of them stayed in St. Louis. But even on game day on Saturday, it was such a antiseptic feel. It didn't have the interest that rolling into Jordan-Hare or rolling into Oxford or rolling into Tuscaloosa or rolling into Athens has.
Yeah. Well, when you go to Starkville, you look, Bo, you worked there and lived there. You're always going to be part of Mississippi State. You're writing a book about Mississippi State athletics. Kevin's going to try to get back on with us. He's got some technical issues down there. We need to have that old organ music that would play in the background. We're experiencing technical difficulties. We'll be back with you momentarily. Kind of like when Mildred, back in the day, when Mildred would call the Feinbaum show, and that he had his producer Vickers or Bob Lockamy, and they would be laughing so hard, and he was going, "Holy cow, Mildred! Wow, I hope we have jobs tomorrow." But they would have to go to a pause. But here's the problem.
I know one thing. If you're going to talk about a Mississippi State road trip, I think Orlando Lundy just scored another touchdown on us. I think Butter Lundy just ran another one in. Man, that's like a snake pit going through. My ears ring for a week after that place.
Well, and Bo, when you go to Starkville now, they did it about 9-10 years ago. Both ends, it's bowled in now, and it is so loud. And they've got a giant jumbotron with Drake Waterfowl ads, every other ad, and because that's a big sponsor, and I've got a lot of their gear. It's great stuff, but man, it's a great atmosphere.
They got a secret code there, because "please stop the cowbells" when it comes on the big screen means ring them louder. That's not "please stop." That's ring them louder.
I'm a free market guy. I'm going to tell you, I do love the cowbells. I know they're a pain in the ass for a lot of people, but it's a tradition and it's pretty cool. But they're supposed to stop ringing as they break the huddle, Bo. Is that what it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Supposedly being the key word.
Supposedly.
Wait a
Kevin,
minute,
you may have had some hearing damage.
Wait. I'm going to pick up from a friend. I got you. What was it, the 2014 season when it got number one for about 5 weeks? Yeah. Prescott. And that run really went to another level when they beat Auburn 5.
Kevin,
We're game the year before.
Yeah, here goes. It's better. You sounded like R2-D2 from the original Star Wars movie.
I don't know I got gremlins today. I don't know what's going on. But that was the start, I think, of the Ring Responsible.
Yes.
The Ring Responsible campaign, right? Got to give them credit. I think as much as humanly possible, they held off until they were supposed to ring, and it was as good an atmosphere.
Yeah, we lost Kevin again. Hopefully he can come back. But you're right. Ring true, ring responsibly. And Bo, the Cowbells even made it to Saturday Night Live, didn't it? Was it Christopher Walken? We need more cowbell.
We need more cowbell.
They hand their cowbells down from one generation to the next. Did Jerry Clower have his own cowbell?
Oh, sure. I think he had a gold-plated one or whatever.
Yeah, he did.
And
by the way, I love the fact that they were ringing them in Raymond James Stadium at the end of that bowl game.
Yeah,
that was really cool when they were ringing them after they won that game for Coach Leach.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was good. That was nice. And Rob, this really the origination of why they got banned in '74.
Suge Jordan.
Suge Jordan. They had the State had a bowl team. They'd been kind of up and down for about 8 or 10 years, and Auburn had, I think, 3 illegal procedure penalties because they couldn't hear the snap count. So the December meeting, the SEC, they said that's it on cowbells, but they started smuggling them in women's purses after that.
Yeah, it got to be crazy. But Kevin, we got about a minute before the break, but we're having a lot of technical issues today. We're supposed to have Tutai Timmy up there from Hardy, Arkansas, and he's saying he's getting blocked. It may be what they always used to blame in the early days of the computers, and we're old enough to remember that, a syntax error or sunspots. What the hell's a syntax error? A sleestax? A syntax? I don't know what. Kevin, we come back from the break. I want you all to tell some stories from these press boxes that you've been to. Bo, you ran it for 12 years. Kevin, I still call them sports information directors because that was when, and Buddy Martin pointed something out that was really cool on the show a couple of weeks ago. He said, when you go to the press box at Jordan-Hare Stadium, on the walls are pictures of all the sports writers, that have, so many of them that have covered Auburn over the years. He said at Florida, there's nothing in that press box. You are an absolute fool and an ingrate if you do not pay homage to the sports writers. They are the artists. They are the Michelangelos, the Van Goghs, the Rembrandt, because they tell your stories. We'll be right back to tell stories. I'm back with our own version of Tales from the Crypt, stories from the press boxes that you've been to over the years. And that's the Dallas Morning News that Bo is holding up.
A newspaper, Kevin.
Yes.
I missed them.
Yeah. It was funny, y'all talk about the newspapers. We're over here at the Cherry Farm. We're in Lee Hall here. This is the house was built in 1930. It's our hunting lodge. We love to be over here. It's 30 minutes from Memphis. And back in the day, they would have the servers take an iron and iron the newspaper in the morning because it kept them from getting the ink on their hands. So that's a people have forgotten. But if you watch my wife, Audrey, was telling me about that on Downton Abbey or whatever. They would always press the thing. But I tell you one thing, man, I would, as much as we would get frustrated sometimes by what we read in the paper, it's the best thing that ever happened. When we were a well-read, we were a much more literate society. And now that everybody just looks for the quick soundbite on TV, we're not what we used to be, but we'll get back to it because you know what? That's the free market. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize it's better to have the printed version in your hand. But Kevin, talk about that in the press box. We lost Frank. Hopefully he did not go off the road somewhere. But here he is. But now we got the frontal. Here we go, a board group. But Frank, Kevin, you were telling some stories about those press boxes up there. Your head had to be ringing.
Well, and one of the great things about Starkville and Davis Wade Field is it's an open press box. The one thing that was the worst innovation, one of the worst innovations from a sports writing perspective was closed press boxes, where there would be hermetically sealed glass windows in front of you.
Yes.
You can't hear the game. You can't feel the atmosphere. You don't even feel like you're at the game. Terrible idea. And that's why I always admired, the old school SIDs, as you mentioned. And I would throw back what you said about sports writers, Rob. I would throw that right back at people like Bo and Claude Felton and Langston at Ole Miss and David Housel, of course, and Larry White going back. Those guys made it possible for us to do our jobs to the best of our abilities. Those guys understood the importance of relationships in allowing you to talk to coaches and players, not shielding them and hiding them and allowing only group interview sessions and press conferences. You don't get to know a person in a press conference. You get to know a Sylvester Croom sitting in his office, looking across the desk at him, talking that way. That's how you develop relationships. And guys like Bo understood that. And I am forever grateful to the SID profession, especially in the SEC, because they were, as the football teams were the class of what they did, so were the SIDs in the SEC. They were without compare. They were great ones across the country, but never as a group did you find anyone as good as the guys in this conference. But in the press box itself, first that was always my biggest complaint, Bo. When press boxes were sealed, please. I mean, I'm at the game. I want to feel like I'm at the game. Another thing is the unique nature of each press box. You guys remember in Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge, those metal steps from the first row. I've seen more than one sports writer stumble up or down those steps or bang their shins against those steps. They were narrow. It was a little bit of an athletic move just to get up or down the steps without falling. So that was something that was kind of unique and fun. I look at Jordan-Hare Stadium, for example. You've got elevators. You have two elevators, main elevators. There's two on each end, actually. But we would go down, do our interviews after the game. Then you go back to the elevator to get back up, and you're on deadline. It's a Saturday night. One time there was a long line at the elevator. So I decided, I was a lot younger and in better shape at the time. So I decided I'm going to run up the ramps. I'm going to not stand in that line. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get my column done on deadline. And somewhere between the ground level and the press box level, I was chewing gum, which was my mistake. I bit my tongue.
Oh.
I didn't realize how badly I'd bitten my tongue until one of my colleagues, Charles Goldberg, looked at me and said, "You're bleeding." I had blood from biting my tongue coming out of my mouth. So I had to get an empty cup. And it was my own spit cup, but I wasn't spitting tobacco. I was spitting blood. I'm typing, spitting blood, spitting blood. Just kind of the fun things that you experience when you're a sports writer on deadline on a Saturday night in the SEC.
Well, yeah, and you're exactly right. The sports information directors, I mean, again, who do you model your things after? I think about my mentors in print journalism, people that I learned things from, what you learn just as a kid, just getting lucky to do it for, senior year of high school, to get to work up there with Buddy Davidson and David Housel and Reba. Just said, "You want to work in the press box with us?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And I went down to about every game my senior year. And man, I'm gonna tell you, you know about how both of y'all know David Housel. He'll rip you a new one, and then come give you a hug and say, "Hey, just trying to make my point." But that's what all the great coaches and people do. But I love him. I mean, because he's so consistent. And you know, and what I hate the most is when you talk to someone like a David Housel, someone who's been there and they're retired. They say, "Well, nobody wants to hear." Yeah, they do. We need, because Bo and Kevin, when you're 95, we're going to still have you on this show because it's so valuable.
I hope so.
What you do. Yeah. Hey, you get one trip to the plate, but that's the thing about it. You think about Herb Vincent, who has been so kind with me getting, stuff for SEC Media Days or whatever. And I always make a point when I see him to say, I want to tell you how much I appreciate what you do for me, because I know you probably hear a lot of people coming at you and complaining. But the sports information director, I'll never forget the Auburn LSU game, October 1989. I was working at Channel 3 in Columbus, and of course, I had to work on Saturdays. My parents had come in town, and they stayed with me for the Auburn LSU game that day. And back then, this is pre-email, electronic tickets, e-tickets. They, of course, had left the tickets at home on the kitchen counter. And I called David Housel. David Housel did something and had something done here, there. And they went to the will call window, and there were the tickets. He did that for me. And that's in every sport. I mean, the coolest thing is getting to go out there. Just in the time that I got to do it as senior in high school, and the first 5 games of my freshman year, because I just couldn't handle the not cheering. He goes, then you can go over in the drunk tank with your Ples brothers. And I said, I'm going to the drunk tank. But just remembering getting to be around those sports writers and getting to just going out there and meeting Jack Harrison from the Gainesville Sun, an Auburn, Florida game in 1981, and just seeing, we want to beat them and their rivalries, but it's all about relationships, man. And these people that, and you saw back in October 8th of 2021, when they dedicated the statues of Clifford Leroy Hare, Ralph Shug Jordan, and Patrick Fain Dye out in front of Jordan-Hare Stadium. Look who was there at the dedication. Gene Stallings, Lauren Smith, Vince Dooley. I mean, all these people. I mean, you got to think about that, man. I hear a lot of people spew off a lot of vitriolic hate about this school. Let me tell you something. Dr. Waller May, the May Veterinary Clinic in Tuscaloosa and Northport, one of our great sponsors. 95% of his clientele is Alabama folks. I mean, they know them, and they're all Auburn people, and they get along great. They have. It's all about the relationships, man. And Kevin, you know this, and Bo is the sports information director, and Frank, you know this. We all go to each other's schools, and I hear people say this fan base is bad or whatever. I get along with people. I mean, maybe it's because we've got a lot of good food and beer and Redmont vodka or whatever. But
this RV's been parked on the corner of Lem, Morrison, and Donahue on Auburn's campus so long I should have a damn degree from there.
Kevin, are you in Florida today with the palm tree, or is that a yucca plant behind you?
No, no, I'm at home. My wife loves to plant flowers, and
you got a beautiful house and garden, by the way.
Thank you. Well, hey, listen, we're working on a project. It's kind of hush hush, but when we get finished over the next few days, in fact, we've been working so hard. One of my sons said, Dad, he's my younger son, just graduated high school. He's about to go off to college. He's about to go to Gainesville, room with my older son. And he said, Dad, I thought I was going to have a relaxing summer. My last summer before college, I thought I was going to hang out by the pool. I was going to, shoot basketball. We were going to play ping pong. And you got me out here in the dirt working, but we're doing something special. I will show you guys. We'll get you a visual, maybe next week, maybe in the next couple of weeks. But we worked we worked after dark. We worked so late last night, we had to drag out spotlights to complete the project we're working on. You can see a little bit of it over one of my right shoulder. But this is a tribute to my wife. She does a wonderful job of making in addition to working as a real estate agent, of keeping our house beautiful.
Well, landscaping, Dad, he's an architect, and he said that the thing they taught you in architecture school at Auburn, he says, boy, you can overcome a lot of architectural sins with great landscaping. And I absolutely believe that. Frank's in real estate. Your wife's in real estate. Bo is the mayor of the Metroplex of Carrollton. and this is the thing, Frank, jump back in there. We lost you there, but you're back on the road right now. But I think the coolest thing about it is 24/7. We're gasping for air at the end of every show because, we do it 6 days a week, a couple hours, 12 hours a week, and we still don't have enough time to get it because year round, and that's what makes Southeastern Conference and Southern College sports so big. And Bo, you as a great writer, you teach journalism, don't you, at North Texas State?
Yeah, just retired from it, but and I did want to thank you, Kevin, Rob, Frank. Thanks for the nice words. A quick, Kevin will love this. It might have been a little bit before his time, but we always had to make sure we had Coca-Cola and Sprite products up there because we had after post game, not during the game, we had a few folks that had small metal containers that would have a little nip between the first and second edition of the newspaper.
There we go.
I won't name any of my former colleagues who I came up under, Bo, but I know exactly. I don't have to say the names. You know who we're talking to. But again, great guys who I learned so much from through their experience. Imagine this. I'm 24 years old. I'm just out of graduate school at the University of Florida in journalism. I'm covering Auburn during Bo Jackson's senior season, his Heisman Trophy season. I don't know anything about anything in terms of Southern football journalism. I'm really, really a raw rookie, and yet I learned so much from the guys that I was around. One of the most memorable trips I had was driving Alf Van Hoos, the legendary columnist from the Birmingham News, and before that, a war hero. Actually was a war correspondent. So you think sports writers have it tough? We thought we had it tough on Deadline on Saturday nights. Alf was in the European theater. So him telling stories driving from Birmingham to Knoxville for the 1985 Auburn Tennessee. I know you don't want to remember this one, Rob. The Auburn Tennessee game. Auburn was number 1 in the country. Tony Robinson had an unbelievable game for Tennessee. Yeah. They knocked off. That started the false narrative that Bo Jackson wasn't tough. He came out of games when the going got tough. That was foolish. I reported on it at the time, but out telling those stories about World War II, about meeting Casey Stengel at spring training, it was a wealth of knowledge and history that you could get it in a book, but you don't get it the way you get it from guys who've experienced it, passing it down, sharing it with you. And the best part was I had a brand new Mercury Cougar. And it had everything was electric, which was relatively new at the time. And Alf was he was looking for the window to put the window down a little bit so his pipe smoke, because he always had a pipe, so he could let out some of the pipe smoke. And he hit the wrong button, and his seat went from here, went straight back. And he let out a sound like he was an 8-year-old on a roller coaster. One of those priceless memories. Here's a giant of Southern sports journalism. And he, smoking his pipe, and all of a sudden he goes from here to here in no time. It was a lot of fun.
Well, by the way, those war correspondents, if you think it's tough getting a deadline done in a press box in Baton Rouge, let me tell you something. When you're writing your reports with a small pencil in a foxhole that's filling up with water as fast as you can write on wet paper, you know you've done something. And by the way, you were talking about writers that have imbibed. I've finished 3 stage plays, 1 screenplay. I'm working on a 5th, and I call that keyboard lubricant. That's what bourbon is. Keyboard lubricant.
Yep. Well, here's an interesting thing from one of our listeners. He said, does anyone remember Buddy Rutledge being carried up the stadium as the Auburn play-by-play announcer when he was in his wheelchair? And another interesting side story, John Burgess, a longtime advisor, Sigma Nu at Auburn, and advisor to many students, including my kids, me, all of us at Auburn. Back in the early 70s, before the ADA law was ironclad as it is, he would have students every morning and every day in class meet the people who were in wheelchairs and needed handicap access and would carry them in. That's the kind of guy John Burgess and his wife Betty are. Great people but you always remember the kindness of these people. And that's something David Hauser would say. He said, you're a representative of Auburn. These writers are coming from all over the country, and your job is not to say, I hope we beat you 50-0. Make them and their stay here as good as possible. And look at the payoff. You still talk about it. You mentioned about Claude Felton, and think about Haywood Harris and Bud Ford up in Tennessee. And you just think about all the SID, Langston Rogers, Bob Hartley, Bo Carter here. And I remember, Kevin, Bo, when he used to be part of the SEC Sports Journal with Ben Cook. I mean, and that's why now who can name the media relations director at any school in the SEC? All we know is they shelter coaches and hide them from people, and they're getting paid all this money, and they don't want to give you any access. And Kevin, you think about sports radio, and Frank and Bo. Growing up in Memphis, I listened to George Lapidus, who was a writer. And George would say, I drove down to Tuscaloosa and I spent the day with Coach Bryant or with Coach Jordan, or he'd go to Knoxville. That's what, Kevin, you did, Bo, you did. And Frank, that's what we would read. And they would say, I was at practice today and I noticed this. And you were like, you were hanging on every last letter, punctuation mark and everything. And by the way, people indented 5 spaces to the right. That makes I still do that.
Unlike social media, the reporters vetted it. There was a vetting process. So when you read it, you actually
hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about that. How much stuff just goes to press and there's no checking. Do it, but do it right. We'll be right back with the Scholars.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Here's another one. Maury Gaston down in he's from Sylacauga, lives in Mountain Brook, said, by the way, Kevin, Charles Goldberg grew up in Sylacauga 2 blocks from me. He and my brother traded lots of cash on the Coosa Valley Country Club golf course. So, I mean, you think about that. These guys riding in there with a rider like Al Fan, who's from Birmingham to Knoxville. How much fun would that be? And what could you really learn from being around someone like that? That's the beauty of it all. But again, we follow this. And Frank, interesting point. You just said you saw a road sign that said Lawrence, Kansas in the mileage, and then one right next to it had Manhattan, Kansas. And the mileage rivalries are an awesome thing, even in the great state, the sunflower state of Kansas. And Kevin hopefully is going to be back with us. And we got, hopefully we can get Larry Bud Melman, Timmy Two-Tie on here with us here in just a second. I'd like to check with the travelers that are heading out there. Frank, you need to go back through Hardy, and let's see if we can get Tim. Here we go, our version of Larry Bud Melman here on the Letterman Show. Timmy, can you hear us this morning?
Yeah.
There he is up there. There he is, Timmy Two-Tie in Hardy, Arkansas. Tim, how you doing up there this morning? There are a lot of people coming up there this morning. I know Tim, you've got the flag out there. You're up there every day of the week in Hardy, Arkansas. You got people traveling everywhere. What some of the people you've met them? Tell people about kind of what you're doing this for. Tim, can you hear us?
I do it for
Hopefully we can hear you, Tim. But there's a lot of traffic up there this morning on the way. I know we were up there last weekend on the Spring River. There's nothing like the Spring River this time of year. Can you hear us?
I can't hear him.
Okay, all right, Tim. We're gonna abort the mission. We're gonna get this fixed. We'll get it right for next week. We'll get it right. Trying to get Larry Bud Melman from the New York City Port Authority. Maybe he can offer them all a hot towel. We'll have to get that done. But that's the whole thing about it. And y'all were just talking about the sports information directors, media relations directors, and one of y'all, Frank, you were on a roll right before the break. Pick back up where you were, because I know you're heading out west.
Well, I was just saying that the sports reporters, you were mentioning about when a sports reporter would meet with a certain coach, or they'd get access at a particular practice. And then the reporter would, now again, only if it was on the record. He wouldn't do it if it was off the record. But if it was on the record, he'd go back and tell you, well, now we've got social media, but social media, you don't know if it's right or not. You don't know if it's just somebody sitting in their parents' basement pontificating. But back in the day, people like Kevin and Bo and all the great sports writers, they would vet that information before they would go public with it. They wouldn't risk their reputation on something that wasn't true. And that's what I think we're missing in this world of social media, as opposed to the really true, hard, hitting true grit journalists that used to cover our teams.
Yeah, I agree with it. And then here's a story right now, getting some questions for it. Kevin, Bo, Frank, and somebody answer it. A lot of chatter right now about Memphis to the Big 12. I mean, there's a lot of realignment. It's going to start up now between now and media days, which will begin in mid-July. Kevin, I'll start with you and Bo. What do you think? Could Memphis do it? I mean, could FedEx go, hey, we'll put a hub in Oklahoma City if you'll let us be in the Big 12? Could it happen?
Well, and again, this is just opinion. I have no inside information on that. Certainly, they could make it happen if they really wanted to. I don't have any question about that. I will say it would be very disappointing for people in Birmingham, for UAB fans, if having just moved to the AAC, Memphis were in short order to leave and go to the Big 12, because that's been a really good rivalry. The battle for the bones, which one of the best trophies in sports for a regular season game, the rib trophy, the barbecue battle between Birmingham and Memphis. Who has the better barbecue? Look, you got to do what's best for your school and your program. But yeah, Memphis is certainly capable if they're dedicated to it. Obviously, every level you go up, your budget goes up. So you better be able to meet that to be able to compete. You don't want to get to a bigger conference or a so-called better conference. Bigger is not always better if you can't compete.
Yeah. Bo, are you hearing any rumblings out there in the Metroplex? So you're, of course, in Carrollton, north of the Metroplex. But the Memphis wants to be, but he's right. The Birmingham and Memphis and UAB have always had a great rivalry. But Memphis, they brought Dr. Hargrave in there from Auburn. He was the provost. He started a year ago, April 1st. And I know he was brought in there to make things better. That's why you hire somebody new. Could it happen? Is it realistic? And how much money would Memphis have to spend just to make it happen?
That's a great point. Our friend Steve Hatchell, had great ties to Memphis from the old Metro Conference days. Remember those, Kevin? And before he was the original commissioner of the Big 12 for 4 years. And he was he used to speak at the Memphis Athletics banquets like every other year or whatever. And the new commissioner, Brett Yormark, this guy worked in the NBA for a long time. His wife owns some $1 million fashion. This guy is a mover and a shaker. So the big rumor is Kevin's heard this probably too, the four corner states, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, especially to get some rivals for Brigham Young. But a lot of it depends on whether the Pac-12 conference sort of comes back together. And if they don't, you could see Memphis, you could see possibly Colorado coming back. There's Well, the rumors are flying, as Kevin and Frank know.
So, possibility. Memphis has been in a lot of conferences. Conference USA, the Metro Conference. They were in the Missouri Valley Conference for a long time. It's one of those schools they're looking for something to latch on to, and all of y'all know it takes money. It takes a huge investment, infrastructure and everything like that to make that happen. So it'll be interesting to see. Another question for everybody to talk about as we get toward the SEC, and I don't know if Tim, if you can hear us or not, if any better, but we were just going to ask you how the traffic's moving up there, and Hardy, if there's lots of people traveling now. It is officially summertime now. Can you hear us, Tim? Whoop. All right. We will get our IT people on that here soon to try to fix that. But bottom line, what do you all think is going to happen with TV? Kevin, the Big Ten TV deal did it fall apart? Kevin Warren has gone back to the NFL. Big Ten's going to have to get a new commissioner, but they were bragging about the $1 billion TV deal. How far behind is the SEC on their TV deal?
Well, they're working. They're working to get more money from ESPN. That's a big part of the reason they're staying at 8 games for 2024 after Oklahoma and Texas join the league. Is they believe there's more value to 9 SEC games rather than 8. So they'd like to see an adjustment of their media rights deal with ESPN. We'll see if that happens. We all know there's some tough times there for that network. Sadly, a lot of good people have been laid off, and more will be laid off, and nobody wants to see that. So this is not the time for ESPN to be announcing that they're going to throw another $100 million at the SEC. That may happen over time. I think that's why we're seeing probably the primary reason why we're seeing the 1-year stopgap. Hopefully it's a 1-year stopgap 8-game schedule in 2024.
Bo, interesting. And the cord cutters, that's the big thing that's happening right now with people streaming. I mean, streaming's great, but ESPN been around since 1979. Bo, could they be on the block to where Fox Sports tries to buy them, or Apple? Because Apple will say, we've raised this generation of people that hold everything in their hand, and that's the best way to reach people.
Yeah, Apple CEO is an Auburn grad, as you guys know, and big
Robert
football.
Dale.
He's on the board of directors for the Football Foundation, so he's very interested in this, to say the least. But no, Rob, you hit the nail on the head, and Kevin's seen this too. The cord cutting. I don't know if maybe Hulu and some of those others can make a big punch. And the NFL keeps going to more Amazon stuff all the time. So I don't know. I guess everybody the social media thing is really taken hold. So they may have to make some sort of an adjustment on web streaming, direct to customer deal. There are all kinds of things they need to show some imagination and keep fighting for it, I guess.
Frank, you're traveling right now. I mean, you can watch anything you want on your iPhone or iPad aboard Bengal One. Do you foresee Apple potentially going and buying ESPN and saying, hey, we've got a already ready-made audience of people that are holding everything in their hand?
If Disney doesn't get out of the political business, they might have to be quite honest with you. They're hemorrhaging money. Look, all I can remember is when we went to UCLA for LSU's opener 2 years ago. Yeah. We watched more games on ESPN Plus that day because it was it was right after week 0, so it was the first technical week of football. And I remember having people at my RV and having so many of them pulling up games, and most of the games we could get anything we wanted on ESPN Plus. So I was already a subscriber, so whatever it was quick to click on. Now again, don't forget, you've got a lot of SEC watchers, a lot of listeners, and there's a lot of older people that watch our football games. You don't want to lose that traditional crowd that tune in, going back even to the days of ABC when you tune in to watch Auburn play Alabama in 1977 on ABC. and you got your slippery rock score. So, you don't want to go too far too fast. But I think that's the way it's going. I mean, that's the way they're monetizing it. But I'm interested to see what this television deal is. And look, the Big Ten deal, I heard there's like issues with it. I mean, Kevin and Bo might know more than I do, but I don't think that's a done deal yet at all. And let me tell you, whatever the Big Ten does, the SEC will trump it. You can bet.
Yeah, and they're sort of like when the Big Ten, though, back in August of 2020, followed the lead of the Mid-America Conference and was going to not have football. You better thank God for Nebraska, Iowa, and Ohio State's fans and a lot of the parents. Yeah, and then Trevor Lawrence and people out in Oregon and on the West Coast all got together to say, hey, look, man, we want to have a college football season. And, college football, it is special. And I'm against anything that makes college sports more like pro sports. Okay. So I'll just say that. And, I believe we will work this out. The free market always does. But what we need is a commissioner for college athletics. I mean, that would be the NCAA has basically abdicated the throne. They're not doing anything. And Kevin, we talked about this earlier in the show about the NIL rules. They're different. But the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States, all the power is vested in the states, which we're lucky. We're different from everywhere in the world. So all 50 states can have their own NIL rule. But that is something that now we're saying Joe Manchin and Tommy Tuberville are the two senators doing all the work on it. Nick Saban's friend and a former Auburn coach. It's amazing how so much goes back to the state of Alabama. It's the center of the universe where you are, Kevin, for college football. 85% of the people there identify as a college football fan. The other 15% didn't get the survey because if you live in Birmingham, listen, we go to Atlanta a lot, in Birmingham, Auburn, you got to stop in Milo's. Kevin, are you a Milo's hamburgers guy?
Double hamburger.
Yeah.
You got to double it. Not just a single.
Man.
It's got to be two. Got to be two. And some of the best French fries in the world also.
Oh my God.
I know Birmingham is the center of the universe when it comes to referee replays. I know that.
Hello, Birmingham. I get the Mexi burger and those fries and the tea, the Milo's tea. You can't beat the Mexi burger. Is my favorite. I think they get 21 locations. But they're only in Alabama.
I'm at Travel Center. I gotta go. I love y'all, man. Y'all have a great day. Let's keep watching that baseball. And let me tell you, Kevin, if the Gators get in, the Tigers get in, that first bowl of gumbo's on me, brother.
We will be there, Frank.
Right.
We will be there.
Sounds good. All right, brother. Take care, pal.
Thank you, Frank. You and Rhonda, be careful.
All right, Rob, see you, pal. Bye-bye.
Okay. Kevin, I'm going to send you Frank's stuff right after the show, and he is serious about this. You get out there to Omaha because – he will put on quite a show. And man, that is a 41-foot piece of Mardi Gras. It's purple and gold. Bengal won. So as he heads out on his Clark Griswold type summer vacation, but his kids aren't with him. It would be a lot of fun to have 4 or 5 kids on there with you. No, if they're a little bit older, but that's the whole fun. I've taken quite a few road trips in an RV. Guys, we got about a couple of more minutes. And Kevin, let's say this. We most often see the face of Christ and the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We got the freedom, this platform, the First Amendment, free speech, and we have great guests like Bo Carter and Kevin. Kevin, tell them how they can follow you in the Birmingham lead. Same to you, Bo. And then we're going to have to scoot out of here and be back on Monday.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I apologize for the technical difficulties today.
No problem.
We'll try to get those worked out
time to be with us
for next time. I always enjoy our visits on Saturdays. Yeah, you can follow me. Go to Birmingham Lead, and it's Lead, L-E-D-E, the journalism way, right, Bo? BirminghamLead.com. That's where you can find. Basically, it's an online newspaper. Instead of that 9-year-old boy on his bike throwing it in your driveway, they're throwing it right into your email inbox. It's every day. I write twice a week, generally on Sundays and Thursdays, sometimes more. Sometimes we shift the days. depending on events, but I hope everyone will check it out. It's a quality journalism product. And yes, you have to pay for it. I know that's a shock to some people who are used to getting newspaper websites for free. Again, terrible foresight by the newspaper industry, not understanding what the internet would be. But you used to pay for the newspaper, right? So you want if you want quality work, go to BirminghamLEDE.com and check it out.
And what is the cost per month?
It's $5 a month, $10, somewhere between $5 and $10 a month. It's minimal. It is well worth it. Like I said, hey, the Birmingham. Well, I keep saying Birmingham News. That's my roots. Yeah. Several of the writers there won Pulitzer Prizes recently.
Yes.
To give you an idea of the quality of the work that they do there.
$5. That's one Hams 40. I'll just say that. Bo, tell them how they can keep up with you. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
It's at Bo Carter 52 on Twitter, and also the Texas Sports Daily on Facebook and sports page DFW on .com, and a free service on that. So enjoy, and always enjoy Kevin's stuff on Alabama.
This is as good as as good as it gets. And I'm going to thank all of y'all for taking time to join us, and also all of our great listeners and our great sponsors. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. Make a lot of positive things happen. We'll see you Monday. We're out of here.